Welcome back to Intelligent Investment Today, the podcast concerned with all things value investment. In each episode, we take a look at a different topic and consider how we can apply the rules of the craft, as laid down by the man widely considered to be its founding father, Benjamin Graham, to the problem at hand. In this episode, we take a look at how unconscious biases can affect and infect our financial judgments and decisions. Unconscious biases can take many forms, but it can prove to be particularly risky to investment returns when it leads the investor into believing they are in possession of an especial knowledge of a business that is somehow denied to the investment community as a whole. This typically comes about through some personal connection to the business in question, either as an employee or as a customer. We will consider how such connections can all too frequently lead to misvaluations by investors. So without further ado, buckle up and get ready for another dive into the world of value investment as inspired by the man himself, Benjamin Graham. So you happen to work for a particular company. This fact gives you certain privileges that are not open to others not employed by that business. You're allowed an inside track on how a business operates, you know its strengths and its weaknesses, and are able to get a general feel for how things are going. This should automatically mean that you are in a much better position to place a valuation on that business than is some outsider not privy to this information. Right? Instinctively, this conclusion feels self-evidently to be true. But in practice, it all too often leads the investor astray. There are various reasons why this might be so. The first one is that in reality, a lot of what the investor knows about the business is likely to be of limited value when it comes to matters of valuation. An employee may have intimate knowledge of a production process, say, or they may have close knowledge of its marketing strategy. Whilst this is all very well and good, and they indeed do know much more about the specifics of how a business operates than does an outsider, none of these things are likely to give the employee any significant advantage when it comes to the bottom line of what a business is actually worth. But any advantage is surely good when it comes to valuation. So in theory at least, even an incremental edge bestowed through the privilege of working for a business should result in presenting the employee investor with the upper hand. What often happens in practice, however, is that any such benefit is thoroughly destroyed through the overconfidence this insider information concocts inside the mind of the employee. There is something quite comforting about the familiar, and no business is likely to be as familiar as the company that employs you. A lot of people also feel a sense of personal belonging to their employer, and these factors can engender a sense that owning stock in that business is somehow a safer, happier place to be than purchasing shares in an unknown and unfamiliar entity. There is undoubtedly something about investing into the stocks of your employer that gives rise to a sort of warm and fuzzy feeling. However, overfamiliarity can, if you're not careful, lead you to miss what is stark and obvious to any outsider. Nobody, for instance, believes that their baby is ugly. With things that we've grown attached to, we are much more likely to see the good in them and disregard or fail to see the bad. How many times do you see in news reports someone who has just been sentenced to life in prison for a horrific murder, and yet when they interview their friends or family, they always say, "But little Johnny was always such a nice boy." Or a wife beaten black and blue by her husband who is convinced deep down he is an alright sort of chap. The same factors here are at hand. Our critical faculties are often subdued when faced with evaluating things that we are too close to or fond of, even if to the rest of the world the failings are blindingly obvious. The exact same factors also come into play when customers look to invest into companies or brands they love. Sometimes being a fan of a particular product or service can lead us to feel a close personal attachment to a particular business. It is easy enough to form a bond with a car brand, say. We saw a huge fan base build up around the Tesla brand. People were literally in love with their cars and almost viewed them as an extension of themselves. They were emotionally invested in the product and the brand. This can give the fanboy or girl the false sense that they are privy to information that is somehow denied to non-Tesla owners. One day they think everyone will realise what they already know, that Tesla are the best car brand in the world, and when they do, everyone will have a Tesla. And if you truly believe this, the logical step is to buy its stocks at any price. Once again, the critical faculties have been impaired by emotional attachments. The really important stuff like earnings and balance sheets become a pernicious distraction because once people realise how good this Tesla makes them feel, everyone will want one. It will have 100% market share. Same goes with investing in your favourite coffee shop chain. You go there twice a day for your flat white, you're already part of the scenery, and you can prove your loyalty through buying their shares. What price are they trading at? That doesn't matter. The staff always call you by your first name. It's quite easy to see from a psychological point of view why investors can be lulled into a false sense of security in holding the stock of businesses in which they are emotionally entangled, either as an employee or as a customer. It is true that most likely they do know more than the average investor, but what they do know is more often than not things of little importance when it comes to matters of valuation. In fact, most of these emotionally attached investors will fail to pay any heed whatsoever to the information that is really, really important when it comes to what price a business should be trading at. I'm talking of that information you will find in the business's accounts. This really vital stuff is often left out of the valuation process because, well, the CEO seems a really cool sort of guy. Even directors who really do have their fingers on the pulse of their businesses frequently prove inept when it comes to investing in the stock of their own business. Again, emotional attachments are frequently to blame. This is their baby after all, and it's the most beautiful baby in the creche. The blinkers are on, and matters related to the financial reality on the ground are only a trivial concern when it comes to the decision to buy its stock. There is also a secondary, serious consideration to take into account when buying the stock of your employer. If things should really head south, you might find the valuation of your holdings suffering catastrophic losses at exactly the same time as your business is making redundancies. The policy that I propose if you really must invest in a business in which you have formed some emotional attachment to for some particular reason is, firstly, of course, to not allow this to distract you from the really vital stuff you will find in the company accounts. What you personally feel about that business, or what you think you know that is denied to other sections of the investment community, probably constitutes much less than 1% of the overall picture. If you still insist on going ahead, and this is primarily for emotional reasons, then keep that investment to the smallest possible levels. Make sure you can afford to take losses on that investment, and most importantly, mentally ring-fence that investment away from your rationally, intellectually chosen investments. For allowing bad habits and fuzzy thinking to infect the rest of your portfolio will only ever end in disaster. In conclusion, investing in businesses in which you are employed or in which you have developed emotional attachments for other reasons can breed an overconfidence in that company, and this is a frequent cause of overvaluation. Such businesses should not be allowed to bypass the normal methods for stock appraisal. If anything, overfamiliarity should be guarded against by insisting on an even larger margin of safety than would normally be the case. This should help cancel out any psychological premium for the over-optimism that will likely be already baked in. That concludes today's edition. As usual, if you've enjoyed it, please do consider subscribing. That way you need not risk missing any future editions. And do spread the word so we can make this as big a community of like-minded investors as possible. I'm David Coombs. This has been Intelligent Investment Today. Until next time, stay safe and happy investing.